Welcome back, metalheads. Today, I'm spinning the wax with Soren Mourne and Etienne Flinn from Tribunal, and we're listening to Feel the Misery by My Dying Bride. Don't go anywhere, it all starts right now.
Salvation, it calls me to my turn. Was I ever the 1,000,000? Just a reflection of
Hello and welcome back, headbangers and horn throwers alike. This is Spinning the Wax, where we listen to your favorite artists' favorite records. My name is John Garcia, aka Stay Puffed, the Metal Marshmallow, and your friendly neighborhood headbanger. On our episode today, we have two members of Vancouver gothic doom metal band Tribunal, vocalist, cellist, and bassist Soren Mourne, as well as vocalist and guitarist Etienne Flinn. As a duo, they released Tribunal's debut album, The Weight of Remembrance, in 2023 via 20 Buck Spin, and that album got a ton of attention across the metal world, and deservedly so. 2 years later, they're back with a full 5-piece band and their follow-up in Penitence and Ruin, which is an incredible album that builds off their established gothic metal meets traditional metal meets death doom sound. So it's no surprise that the band My Dying Bride is a massive influence on their music, and it's why they've picked 2015's Feel the Misery as their record to spin today. Soren and Etienne share their differing journeys with discovering My Dying Bride and how the English band has crafted decades of slow, sad, melancholic, and immersive music for us all to be miserable to. The musicians also share a ton of insight into the creation of their new album, including how thinking vinyl first allowed them to trim all of the fat from the songs, even if it was an agonizing process to go through, and how Soren's artwork for both of the albums sets a tone and a setting for the listener to enter Tribunal's world. It seems like every little piece of In Penitence and Ruin was poured over, thought about, and overthought about. I very much encourage you to check out the record. And despite the morose nature of My Dying Bride, the three of us have actually a quite enjoyable time, and we definitely use the length of the record to its advantage. As usual, by the time the album kicks into gear, we get lost in the conversation between ourselves, and you'll end up learning a lot about how Tribunal brings their art to life by the conclusion of this episode, as well as hearing chats about dogs, beer, Blind Guardian, terrible 2000s CGI artwork, and much, much more. If this episode appeals to you, please click like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're listening to this anywhere else, please share this with a friend or two that loves doom, metal, and doom metal. My friends, this is episode 20 of Spinning the Wax, where Soren Mourne and Etienne Flinn of Tribunal listen to My Dying Bride's Feel the Misery. Please welcome Soren and Etienne from Tribunal. My friends, it's so good to meet you. How are y'all doing on this fine night?
Great.
Yeah, doing really great.
Yeah, this is you're in the earlier part of the cycle of the interviews, so everything's gonna be fresh in the brain. So
love doing this because as of someone who's done both, like being the first person that someone talks to or like, you know, the 50th, it's always better to be that first person so you're not asking the same questions over and over and over again. Cool. Well, I'm really excited to get into today's pick that y'all have brought on for a number of reasons. But before we get into that, I just want to know, obviously, by the time we're recording this just before the album is being released. But how are you feeling at this stage about this next album coming out, especially because, you know, the first one got some well-deserved buzz, just given the label, given the music, and just given, you know, everything else about the project?
I mean, I think we're both really, really excited about it. Honestly, we were really blown away by the reception to The Weight of Remembrance, our first album. I think that went beyond anything we expected. And I think we really pushed ourselves with this record to make the best album we can. We put a lot more thought into it in a lot of ways, and I'm really proud of it. Yeah, no, like it's hard to say that without sounding a bit too vain. But like I love the record we made. I'm really excited about it. So I'm really excited for other people to be able to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Soren, what about you?
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. It's been we've been so lost in it for what feels like an extremely long period of time, at least mentally. So it actually being fully realized and being out in the world is very exciting, because it's just been this kind of thing that we've been, obsessing about between the two of us and amongst the band. So I'm feeling very excited for it to be out in the world. And it is a bit different. I'm definitely coming in this time with the fact that people have some kind of expectations, just given that we have music out already, but it's exciting. It's a good feeling.
Yeah, like definitely we don't make simple music, and so I think it's a lot of work going over every song, and I think that's left us with a product we're really proud of. But it is also like it's really good to be just done that process and have that behind us. For now, till the next one.
I especially imagine, like, first of all, I loved how you said you two have been lost in the project a little bit. I've heard very similar things from other people, but it's as soon as that it's released, it's like, all right, cool. There's literally nothing that we can do with it anymore. We can't go back. We can't change anything. It's done. But I also think, especially given the first album was kind of interrupted a little bit by the pandemic, and certainly that had a lot to do with it. And I know that y'all had been working on a lot of the songs for that first record for quite a while. I'm sure that with this one, not having that, step and just like getting started and going, and also working with the people that you were working with again, also probably, I'm sure, played a part into this like wild feeling of this album.
Yeah. I mean, definitely our songs on this album are really old.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, because the lag between when we wrote the first songs on the Weight of Remembrance and when it actually came out was quite significant. And so when the Weight of Remembrance was coming out, I think most of these songs were already in existence in some form or another. So they've definitely changed over time.
Interesting.
But
I was going to ask about that for later, but like I'll come back to that. Please keep going.
Sure. Yeah. So. It is different having a band and everything. I think maybe album 3 is the one where we're actually going to write the songs fairly soon to when the album comes out.
Yeah.
Maybe, but this one it was still quite long. But it was really great because the songs were originally written when it was still just Etienne and I, at least formally in the band. So we had a much more collaborative process this time in terms of bringing the songs to their final form and having time to work them out in the jam space and feeling like the album was something that really all of us were a part of, which was great.
Yeah. Etienne, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say just a thought about particularly talking about the pandemic, but also, frankly, I think a classic first to second album dynamic. I think the first record, a lot of it really came together live. A lot of those songs we played at our first couple live shows, or there were songs that didn't make the cut for the album that we've been playing at shows. Whereas with this record, obviously, both because we weren't playing live with the pandemic, but then obviously because we had an actual album to play, we road tested a couple of these ones live here and there, but it is much more stuff that came together, a bit more, arrangements done on the computer or arrangements done in the jam space. Which is just that feels like a bit of a dynamic between the two records, but also makes me really excited to hit the road and start playing these songs for audiences.
Very, very much so. And I've been able to kind of like listen to the first and second album back to back a little bit as like in prep for this. And I'm definitely very excited to see like where the songs are going and where the band are going to be going as well. And I'm sure we can get into it a little bit more. But I mean, you talked about, the album being done for a really long time. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the album was recorded and finished, and then you started taking it to like labels and stuff like that, correct?
Yeah. So it's quite a lengthy the recording process. I think we were with the first record, we were DIYing it completely.
Yeah.
Except for having someone else record the drums, but that was a process for both of us, because it was a learning process to just get. We'd always been recording demos and everything, but to get the kind of performance up to something that we could put on a record was quite something. And also I think it just being our first project like this, we took a really, really long time recording everything. We were also lost in the abyss of the pandemic, so we had infinite time to kind of re-record everything.
Oh, I remember those days. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we were keen, like especially as frankly at the time we were a band with no real following, no real reputation. So I think we were really keen to shop around a finished album
Sure.
Mhm.
because it's a risk for any label to take on a new band with no following. Certainly, we're very grateful for the $20 spin.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think it's an unreasonable risk to go around and be like, "Hey, here's a demo. Do you want to like fund a full album?"
Yeah,
Yes, people
seriously.
did that back in the day, but
Yeah.
it felt more nerve
But yeah,
wracking.
but I guess for context, I think the last song on the first album that we wrote was "The Path," and that was finished writing in May 2020, and then the album came out January 2023.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of lead time we're
Mhm.
talking here.
That's crazy. I will say I swear that album came out in 21. Like I had to look back at it later when I was like gathering my notes. I was like, it must feel like it at some times, but so maybe the music is just like, or the date is just interwoven in the recording somewhere. This feels very much like a 21 record. I don't know.
Sure, yeah. Sad times.
Yeah.
Real quick, what is the dog's name? Because they're adorable.
Oh yeah,
Aw.
yes. My dog's name is Theodore, or Theo for short.
Theo. Well,
Yeah.
scratch Theo for me. Like I said, I've got Buster right here. He doesn't like being anywhere else where I'm not.
Okay.
So, yeah, you might see him, but most of the time he just sleeps through all of these interviews, which is perfect for me.
Yes.
Yeah, and real quick before we get into today's pick, I also was curious, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in greater length the further we go on. But when I was looking at the band and then going back and looking at the, I do have my Tribunal vinyl right here. Oh yeah,
Wonderful.
look at that. And so when I was going through this beautiful thing, I saw that most of the players that are like in the band now were part of the record beforehand. So did that make things a little bit easier? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's been a slow evolution to our current lineup.
Yeah.
Like it was in some ways just a bit of a coincidence that we made the first album as a two-piece because it's always like we started the band together. We've always kind of been the creative core of it,
Mhm.
but we had a lineup, an old guitarist and drummer who
Yeah.
played with us pre-pandemic. They ended up leaving. And we decided, well, we can't play live anyways. Might as well make a record. I can track all the guitars, and then we can just get a session drummer. And the session drummer we found, Julia, was incredible.
Mm.
Like literally, her recording that album was, I think, like the second time I met her.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Things just went really well.
Yeah.
And she started playing with us live, and yeah, she's now our full-time drummer and tracked the whole, And same thing with the others at that point were all people I knew through the local metal scene. I know like the guitarist Jessica is also in a local mellow death band called Caius, who I really love.
Yeah.
So we were friends, acquaintances with Dallas and Jess, and so when we were pulling a band together to start playing live, they were obvious people to talk to. Yeah, it's kind of rolled from there. But they'd been part of the live band for a while since by the time the album came out. So I think they are also acknowledged in the notes there as part of the live band and in the music video for Without Answer as well.
Very much. Yeah.
And we had even done some little short tour with them before they had come on as official members. And I think that was a very good way to, pardon the pun, but to road test, while you work together, because I think if a band can survive like a tour together through the Canadian Rockies in like, what was it, like January or something absurd, we can handle a lot. So we had a great, one of the reasons we really wanted them to join is because we had such a good dynamic just as a group of people playing live and everything. And that certainly translated into the album recording process and made things very smooth. Like we were very fortunate to be in a band of 5 functional, reliable people.
Yeah. Dude, that is half the battle. Like if you're doing that, you're like ahead of most other bands.
Having another guitarist to play their parts on the album was absolutely incredible. As somebody who'd done, obviously tracked all the guitars on our first album, and then like Jessica went above and beyond and also did like all the like sort of engineering tracking for my guitar parts as well. So I am not good at using like recording software or DAWs.
Yeah,
so I
neither
just
am
bring
I, man.
the guitar over to her house and track my guitar parts with her, and that was great. So
yeah, it was very great to be able to divide that labor. Having 2 DAW competent people in the band was very, very
All right. Well, I've yapped a lot, which I told you from the onset that I can do. But we're here to listen to some goddamn music. And anyone that's listened to your music and is familiar with this band will be like, yeah, this makes sense. You guys have brought on "Feel the Misery" by My Dying Bride, which is a band, and we'll get into this a little bit more. I haven't been that familiar with in my history, but over the last little bit, I have started to kind of dabble in. Hasn't exactly been going well, but this album,
Yes, indeed.
yeah, right. But this album though is fucking incredible. I hadn't listened to it before, like you all like decided that you wanted to bring it on, and it's fucking great. So Soren, Etienne, why did you guys bring on this record to listen to? And we can start with whoever's more gung ho about talking first.
I think we had a bit of back because there's the obvious question doing this kind of thing. You're like, do you do the really obvious thing?
Yeah,
Or do you do like, because I had a little bit of the thought about wanting to do something that's a little bit more oblique. Because obviously, like, My Dying Bride for us is like really obviously square on the point.
Yeah.
So I thought, we could do like some like Blind Guardian or something.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we're here to talk about our music. We're here to talk about our new album. And I think what a better jumping off point for that than one of our biggest influences. This album is, like the record that I think really got me into doom metal, like first when it first came out and I started listening to it. So yeah, just like why not do the obvious thing and be into what you're into and celebrate the things that I hope that our fans are excited about as well if they listen to us. So.
Yeah.
And it was I think this album in particular has an interesting spot in our band because I think I also had a history of kind of trying out My Dying Bride and it didn't really click for me. Like I listened to a lot of other types of doom and more trad doom, more kind of occulty sounding doom.
Yeah.
But I don't know what I had listened to by My Dying Bride, but it hadn't quite clicked. But when we were in the very early times of talking about working together for a project, this was kind of the first record that I feel like we found a lot of musical common ground, and I was like, "Oh, I love this. This is great." And we definitely have some diverse tastes between us, and so it's great to find things that we overlap on so strongly. And then since then, I've gotten really into My Dying Bride. I don't know why this one ended up being kind of a gateway for me, but I know it's not considered one of the big classics, but for whatever reason, it was the one that
you love to see a really strong late career classic.
Seriously,
but
yes.
It's funny you mentioned that sort of divergent influences because sometimes I feel like I just like really want to just sound like Draconian and really just want to sound like Candlemass, and that's basically just the sound of Tribunal. Is that intersection, but we both really like My Dying Bride.
Yeah, well, I mean, there definitely is. I mean, Soren, in your vocals, I could definitely tell that there's Candlemass influence in there, which I love because that's not something that you hear necessarily a whole lot, nowadays, unless you're like really, really going for the 50 person in a club doom metal fans type of deal, like you're playing to those types of fans. But I think kind of going back to Soren to what you said about you don't know why this one was kind of like the gateway for it. I think it's because it's got way more heavy metal in it than any of their previous albums, at least that I've listened to. Whereas, like, you can definitely tell that this might have been an album that inspired, like, a Chemist or something like that, where there's a lot more kind of get up and go. I mean, even with, like, the first track, where it's still not fast by any speed metal band's definition or anything like that, but it is more, for lack of a better term, upbeat than most My Dying Bride that I've heard. And I that's what did it for me, as like from the first get-go, it was like intriguing all the way through, whereas like, I've listened to Light at the End of the World and The Angel in the Dark River and Songs of Darkness, Words of Light, and very much like, I'm not saying that those albums are bad by any means, but it definitely is there's a barrier of entry. It is an acquired taste, and those
slower start.
Got
to be ready for 6 minutes of foghorn noises right at the start of Angel in the Dark River.
Yeah, exactly.
That one tapping riff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the record, if you ever wanted to listen to a Blind Guardian, and this goes for anybody out there, I would happily have been able to do that. So
yeah, I love Blind Guardian.
Yeah, they're fucking great. So for people that aren't very familiar with My Dying Bride, because again, this could be one of those bands, and Etienne, you kind of mentioned this, where there's going to be some people that very much are into this band or like know a lot of stuff about them, and then some people like me that are just like, maybe they have a consciousness or maybe they get them confused with My Bloody Valentine like I used to do for the longest time, What should people expect with both this band and this album?
Just gothic doom metal. I think of them very much as being part of that sort of classic Peaceville trio, which
Definitely.
was three doom metal bands on that label coming out of England. I think in the early '90s. So it was them, Paradise Lost, and a band called Anathema, who were all very much foundational in kind of taking doom metal and kind of slowing it down and bringing more gothic metal influences and more death metal influences and stuff that I think is sort of one of the foundations, I think, of what we do in Tribunal. That and then the more 80s style epic trad sort of coming together.
Yeah.
I think you got to be ready for some drama, for some theater, for sure. They're very sincere in it, and I always admire bands who just fully go for it. You know, there's no tongue in cheek about it. They're just it's very sincere. It's very over the top, but I don't know. You
heavy
sell it.
metal.
Aaron has a very unique vocal style. And it's something certainly I feel in our band as well, that sincerity, because I've read interviews with him and whatnot, and he's not the genuinely insane person you might think listening to the record. Like he seems like a well-adjusted dude, but you're making art like this. You don't do half measures. You don't like wink at the camera. You give her, and that's I think what we do in Tribunal, certainly. Like not necessarily to the quite the same extent Aaron does, but I think there's that idea of like we're both people with a bit of a sense of humor and a sense of like we get that what we do sometimes is a bit ridiculous, but you do it with your whole heart. You do it passionately, and you don't you don't like wink at the camera, be like, hey, like. You know,
I stream a few times a week on Twitch, and one of my viewers who comes on all the time from Scandinavia always says that metal is always cool, it is never cringe. You know what I mean? Like, which is also in itself like a tongue-in-cheek thing. But we talk about this a lot on the show about how like just with metal you have to be kind of in on the vibe and in on the joke, so to speak. Whereas like you're gonna be knowing that this is like over the top and ridiculous and kind of silly as well, but also at the same time like it's really fucking cool. And one of the things I really liked about this album is how important both the lyrics and like the vocal lines are to the overall music. And I mean, because you can get just as lost in the stories and the lyrics from this this album as just being intertwined with the music and everything like that. And I think that there is I can tell that as far as I know both of you write lyrics for Tribunal. I can see some of that carryover as far as the lyrical style of wanting to paint a picture and tell something that is both like sort of kind of concrete, but also at the same time like open for interpretation and kind of like ethereal and like almost like a vocal apparition or something like that. So I don't know. I could definitely see the style of lyrics influenced from like this album and specifically.
So I'm just letting my dog up quick.
And I will have a quick show and tell moment. I know we're not literally spinning the wax, but I did want to bring out my
I love it. Yes, this is why I brought yours as well, because I love it when people actually bring the record onto the show.
Yeah,
I want to bring it out and look at some of the lyrics.
One of these days we will spin the wax in real person. Like I'll hook up a record player and everything. But
a wonderful gatefold. It says the Book of Common Prayer and Administration of the Sacraments and Other Rites and Ceremonies.
Oh shit!
They do not do half measures. And it's all the lyrics are written out in like classic sort of medieval tapestry script vibe.
Oh my, that's gorgeous.
It's really well done. A clear art direction.
This is like one of the things I love about physical copies and vinyls and everything like that is just being able to see all of the work that went into all of that.
And I see it says here it's dedicated to the memory of looks like Alwyn Stainthrop, who I think that's his Aaron's father who'd passed away while he was writing this record, I think, and that's what And My Father Left Forever is about.
All right, Soren, Etienne, if you guys are ready, I am so ready to do this. And you mentioned just in for some melodrama, in for a story. I mean, the fact that this album is called Feel the Misery, I think it puts you like right. And they tell you right away what to be expecting on this one.
Yes.
Like the title's almost too much. Like it really is extremely on the point. But I do kind of love it.
I do too. So let's do this. This is Feel the Misery by My Dying Bride in 3, 2, 1, play.
Yeah, I feel like this is such a classic. This is like a Tribunal pump up song.
I mean, this is a hugely influential song for me. I saw, because I wasn't really into doom metal for a long time, but I saw them at a festival in 2016, and I just like wandered in to check them out. And I remember they were playing this song because this was touring in support of this record.
Yeah.
And I remember being like immediately enraptured by the riffs and the vocals, and especially the violin layered in. And that was the first time I got curious about really checking out doom metal, and I picked up this record and then kind of got into Swallow the Sun, Paradise Lost, Chemist, that kind of stuff from there. But
that's really awesome. What about you, Soren? What was your first like introduction to My Dying Bride?
I
think like you were saying, like more from me. Or...
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was through Etienne, because I had checked them out. Just sorry, it's so hard for me not to like sing along to this song.
No, please do. Honestly, karaoke is encouraged on this show. So if you feel like busting out into song, please do.
Not to do karaoke whenever possible. But yeah, no, it was it was just early on when we started talking about working together, because we were we met each other in like a school program where we were the only like metal folks that we knew.
Hell yeah, solidarity.
Interested. Yes, yeah. It's like, hey, you're wearing band shirts, but and then it's like when we were talking about kind of interests in writing or interest in jamming something, we found some kind of common ground in like both of us like doom, but I wasn't as familiar with the doom that Etienne was into, and likewise he wasn't as familiar with the doom that I was into, and so that was I think My Dying Bride was like this record would have been one of those kind of early exchanges that it really captivated me. So that would have been in, I guess, 2017.
I guess it'd be like 2017, 2018,
something like that. So.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, it is interesting. You talk about like you were into doom, but not, Etienne's type of doom or whatever, right? Because of the different flavors and like, it's why I love this genre so much, is because you can do so much with slow, sad, melancholic music. Because I think those are basically the ingredients that you need, and everything else is just kind of open for interpretation. But yeah, I just love the diversity in this genre that can lead itself to so many different things. And we're seeing, like you guys are doing this kind of explosion right now with people really trying to experiment with what they can do with doom.
And I think that has made it a really great genre for us specifically to collaborate in, because I think we're both able to bring our diverse influences in a way that feels, we're bringing them in very, very strongly and in a way that resonates with us, but it's able to fit kind of under something that makes some kind of cohesive sense.
Like I think we have distinct but compatible influences.
Yes.
And I think you could easily fall into either the lane of us having influences that weren't distinct from each other, and I think making a band that maybe sounded a little bit more like a pure worship band that just sounds like somebody else.
Yeah.
Or our influences could be too divergent, and then you end up with something that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I think that the parts of Tribunal are distinct enough to maybe make it a little bit unique, while also fitting together really smoothly. Like I'm always worried that people will listen to our records and think, for each of our records, basically I wrote approximately half the songs and Soren wrote approximately the other half. And I'm always worried that people will listen to the album and be like, this half of the song sounds completely different than those halves. But people don't generally feel that way at all.
No, not at all. I mean, I wouldn't even know, like, honestly, like, as someone who has never seen the inside of your, like, studio or seen you guys work or anything like that, right? And this is kind of what you all were talking about with, like, being lost in the music a little bit. I would never listen to this and be like, oh, yes, I can tell that this is a Soren part and this is an Etienne part. Like, absolutely not. But I also think that because of exactly what you just said is probably why the Weight of Remembrance found such an audience that it did, is because people with so many different life experiences in their music found something that they could attach to it on. And this riff, just like the head banging,
it's like
got that vibe and bang. But there's one other riff in this song that's like this like descending line.
Yes, I know exactly. I wrote that down in my notes. I know exactly what it's so good.
Whenever I listen to a riff like this, it always reminds me how good it is to just
give a good chug.
Just ride the
just
riff.
A good chug.
Yes.
Like sometimes it feels too long in the studio, but then when you're hearing it, you're like, yes, longer. I want more.
Yeah, I was thinking about that listening to this record because I put it on again recently in preparation for the show.
Yeah.
And we edit our stuff quite intensely. And I did have that thought of like, oh, maybe did we cut things too much on the new record? Should we had a little bit more dummy riff repeat? Because this is good.
Yeah.
No, I think the length of your guys' songs, especially after listening to a lot of My Dying Bride recently, I think that the length of your songs is perfect. And even the albums, because I was thinking about this as I was listening to the two back-to-back, where the songs are long, they're slow, they're deliberate, you know, but they take you somewhere, and they always take you from like a point A to a point B. And by the time that you're thinking about it, they're done. And it's just like, I thought that both of the albums were just like perfect length.
And this would be that descending riff I was talking about.
No, you're
Especially
good. Please interrupt.
right on.
Yeah. It's great. It's a great riff. Such an interesting kind of chorus riff because it's not like the most exciting riff in the song necessarily. Like it's not the highest energy point, but I don't know. So it's another one of those kind of just like dramatic flares, like going slow when you expect someone to go fast. It's very captivating.
Yeah, I find this song flows quite nicely.
It does.
Which I think I'll have to say, like obviously I love My Dying Bride a lot, but as always, for me as a person listening down to a record like this, I'll always have that thought process of like, what would I have done differently? And I do find that the band who tends to sometimes meander from section to section with having, okay, this riff's really cool, this riff's really cool, but I'm not necessarily seeing the full connection or the flow of the song. But this is a song where I think they really nailed the flow without just falling into a verse chorus structure.
Yeah, I've listened to this song specifically to kind of map out the different parts of it. But
like the ABC progression.
Yeah, it's such an interesting progression because you feel like you're just on a journey, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like you're listening to something that's overly meandering.
It does not feel like 9 minutes at all. Like that was my first thought when I got to the end of this. Is like honestly, they could have kept going because to get back to one of the things that you said, Soren, as far as like being in a pocket for a little bit and just having a riff go, but it's so good that you don't want them to stop. And I love it when bands like find that pocket. It's one of the things I love about like sludgy doom as well. Like, you get that kind of like nasty resin coated like rusty strings that just goes around with that groove. I'm a sucker for it.
Yeah, I love that stuff. Is really it. Yeah, I really enjoy that kind of thing live and get really lost in it. Our band is like a good contingent of us are very obsessed with Dio and Dio-era Sabbath.
Let's go.
Very included, and we always talk about this like he's like at the beginning of Heaven and Hell, like it's just the bass, it's just going, and the drums, and you're just like. This is so good. I just want to keep listening to this forever.
It's one of my favorite metal songs. Like full stop. That album is just so goddamn good.
Yeah, that is definitely one of my favorite albums of all time.
Yeah.
But anyways, I don't know if we can ride the riff like Sabbath, but but every time I listen to songs like that, I was like, we could be riding the riff for longer.
Yeah, just do it. I'm sure that you can do it live if you've got like an extra like 2 or 3 minutes to kill or something.
Yeah,
that
is something we do talk about. Some of our arrangements get tweaked a little bit live. There's some stuff on the new record we're going to be messing around with, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter. Yeah. But I am a believer that stuff doesn't need to be the same live as it is on record. And the things you're looking to deliver are different.
Yes.
So you can, because sometimes you have that moment of like, oh, this would be really cool live, but it's going to be maybe less interesting on record out of that context. Mm-hmm. Just prioritize for what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah. There's some stuff on the new record that we are going to play when we play it live. We play a shorter version of it, which is it's kind of interesting. But just like when we're playing it in the space, it feels kind of long when you're playing it out as opposed to when you're just by yourself and listening to the record, and you kind of you can settle into this thing, kind of fading out or going on a bit more of a journey. But you kind of want to have like a bit more of a punch or a bit more of an end. So it can go both ways for sure.
But particularly, with like a fade out ending song, obviously, you can't just keep playing quiet, or you slowly turn
have the audio engineer slowly fade down all the sliders.
And I do think it's better to leave people wanting a little bit more on a punchy high note. But also one of the really fun things about playing live, and one of the most painful things about recording sometimes, is that you can keep workshopping it. You can
Yes.
play it live. You can see how it feels. If the audience is seeming like really into it and looking like they're wanting more, you maybe stretch it out next time. That was something that was really fun about being on tour, playing night after night after night, is being able to sit down in the band with everybody and saying, you know, what worked, what didn't, what do we want to try tomorrow night?
Yeah.
It's always a work in motion. And even, you know, if you're playing a half-hour fest set versus like a 50-minute headliner for a hometown audience, you're doing a different approach.
Very much
So
so.
constantly getting to workshop it, as opposed to the album where it is what it is.
Yeah.
It is done.
So this song,
I think we're about to have one of those moments where the song just stops.
Yeah.
And another really good riff that's just kind of a different thing happens.
But I like it.
I love this part, actually. It reminds me of like, it's like an acoustic Immortal riff or something like this. Like I could hear this
Yeah.
on like At the Gates of Winter or something like that, which is
We
interesting.
saw that last night, so we're in a real Immortal.
Yeah,
But totally, it gives you the kind of dark, frosty kind of.
and I love this kind of like the slow tremolo lead line.
Dude, yeah, this is so good. Honestly, this song feels just like a more classic Melodeath song almost.
Yeah.
Like
He
I thought
brings
that
in
this.
harsh vocals. Those aren't on the first track on the album, but he's got,
Yeah,
so it brings that heaviness and that intensity. Yeah, I think I saw them live last year, I guess, and this was I think the only song off this record that they played. I think this actually might have been the only song of like the last 2 decades that they played. They were really digging deep into the old school,
dang.
but they did To Shiver an Empty House, which is cool.
They're touring with the singer from Swallow the Sun right now, correct?
Yeah, they are. There was some kind of I mean, I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's always unfortunate when your favorite bands aren't gelling together the way that you wish they would. I don't know a similar situation, but like probably my single favorite Doom adjacent band is Catatonia, and they've just had a major split between their two main songwriters.
That was probably my fault. I was talking about how much I liked that record on the last recording I did, and then literally like the next week they had their like announcement or whatever. So yeah.
But it's but I'm glad. I'm ultimately glad My Dying Bride is still doing it. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I think Nico's a really cool vocalist from Swallow the Sun. And it's fascinating because Aaron's vocals are so nobody does it like he does. So I would love to see what Nico would do with it, because I think it'll just be cool. It'll be unique. It won't be the same, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
But I hope they, like My Dying Bride and Aaron, find their way back together in the long term. But
yeah, and that's what it sounded like as far as, the statement I heard was just like, hey, if we don't take time away apart right now, the whole band is going to explode, right? So this is
Aaron wants to do High Parasite right now, which is also
yeah, exactly. I thought that record that they put out was like really, really good. So here's, from my understanding, he hasn't like completely tapped out yet. So here's hoping that just a little bit of time away will serve everybody right.
And I totally respect.
Yeah. I feel like when we saw Swallow the Sun, I could see like with the in between stage banter. I feel like he does a voice, a very serious voice. And I feel like I could see that. I could see that working in My Dying Bride.
Interesting.
Well, I feel like whenever I've seen My Dying Bride live, Aaron's just always like vaguely sarcastic British man in songs, like extremely into it, like recklessly so during songs, but like between tracks, he's just like a depressed banter man.
It's that dry British humor, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same. He reminds me a lot of. It's a really obvious one, but I feel it's a very similar vibe between songs to like Nick Holmes from Paradise Lost. That same kind of just dry British humor. And I love that last riff that just finished, like super slow, doomy, melodic with the piano.
It's a bold way to end a song.
Yeah.
This spooky little thing.
Yeah.
Here.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's like they keep adding layers to the music, but yet it still doesn't feel like enough. You know what I mean? Like they're still able to add more stuff to the end of to their songs, but it works for them.
Yeah, but definitely when I compare this to "And My Father Left Forever," the opener, it feels much more like almost like a sectional track where like things don't really reoccur. Like the ideas that are introduced earlier in the song, they don't come back again later. It's just a bunch of cool riffs and a bunch of cool sections that kind of happen.
Yeah.
as opposed to having that sense of, I mean, I really like reusing riffs. I really like having that sense of, tying the room together.
Yeah.
But it's fun to have that sense of it's like a fun adventure and just like ending up in a totally different place than you started.
Yeah, it feels bold.
Yeah.
There's not something that we've done in any of our tracks. I feel like we both have a fairly strong inclination for a chorus to exist or some kind of discernible verse, but
Yeah.
I think the path was the closest to a pure
that's true.
but it still has like the beginning and the end, and there's a main melody.
The motifs, yeah.
But I think that's the only song we've released that really doesn't have a chorus outside.
Yeah, I like when bands can find a way to keep you going without just that. Even just not the even just traditional like verse chorus. Like sometimes what Metallica will do is like we'll do a verse, a chorus, right, and then we're gonna fuck around for a little bit, but like as you say, we come back and like do something like that.
Yeah, like reusing ideas in different contexts. Like here's a riff, but put along to a different piece of music.
Yes.
Or the same chord progression, or like a classic move is obviously like playing something quietly and acoustically and then playing it heavy.
Yes.
So having musical ideas that reoccur that save you from the riff salad, but aren't necessarily pure verse chorus.
Yeah, no, that is one of my favorite things when you hear listening to something and you're like, oh, it's that thing from earlier, but now it's different, and now the other instrument is playing it, and that's definitely been something that I feel like leaned into a lot more on this record.
I was literally about to bring up Ruin and the Penitent as you were saying this.
Like tossing things from like here's on guitar, here it's on keys, here it's on cello, here it's on vocals.
Yeah.
Having a bunch of different melodic instruments that can toss ideas back and forth. And again, My Dying Bride do the same with like they've got keys, they've got cello, they've got guitars.
And it's a really classical move. Like I grew up playing classical music, and that's such a a move that you'll see where you'll see like now like the first violins are playing it, and then now you hear you hear like the piano playing it or something, or like reeds or something, and so I really like that move, and I feel like when I'm writing like that, it always feels very classical to me. I don't know if it's a thing that comes across, but definitely when I'm thinking of those intuitions, I'm thinking about like a lot of the things that I find exciting in classical music.
I don't know if this was intentional or not, but the two kind of mid-album like instrumental interludes on both of the albums and everything like that. I mean, exactly what we were talking about with the cello in Ruin, kind of seeding over, giving the melody to the guitar in the next song.
Yeah.
It did, because the first time I listened to it, it was like, I think that was the same one, but I was just so lost in like the melody of the cello and just like having it carry me down, the melodic river, so to speak, that it wasn't until the next time I went back, I was like, no, okay, like I see it's, the overture almost into this song.
That's a really funny one, because I think that song originated as a solo piano piece that's approximately similar to Ruin. And there was a piece of Soren's, and then we kind of workshopped that into the song that became the Penitent, with the idea of like the right hand of the piano, like the melodic bit going to lead guitar, and then putting in some rhythm guitars, and then we kept the idea of having more like the original version is the interlude leading into it, and then having the cello take over the lead there, because it's such a lead instrument. We want to have more time on.
Yeah, that was a really interesting process, because it was definitely originally conceptualized as something similar to Remembrance on the first record, just kind of a more independent interlude. But it just kind of decided to try riffing
Was
it
that
up.
my idea to be like, we should make this a metal song? I feel like I remember that when we were looking at it, but it's so long ago that I don't even remember.
I feel like I don't remember that, but also there's like a riff on this album that both of us thought that we wrote. So it's pretty
like next year,
whatever. I feel like there's like a lot of mind meld happening.
Yeah,
but
the weight of remembrance is just too much. We're just like throwing puns around all over the place.
Too much time sitting on this couch, riffing back and forth at each other.
Yes, but I'm glad that you didn't just. One of my worries when I was putting those two back to back is that when the riff comes in on guitar, it's like, oh no, are people going to feel like, oh, I've already been listening to this for a while. Like, am I going to feel tired of it or something? But knowing that you listened to it and it didn't even click quite that it was the same thing, but you kind of notice it afterwards. That makes me glad to hear.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think that this is a band that, you know, multiple listens for this music just has to happen, right? You kind of have to, I feel like as a listener, you kind of have to meet the artist halfway in that, like, okay, like I'm going to sit down with no distractions to kind of like absorb this music, or I'm going to sit down and really try and take in the lyrics to everything as well. Just like we talked about with, you know, My Dying Bride in this album, where the lyrics are like put so much else into the song when you like really know what they're saying and talking about. I'm also curious about how, like, I know I've heard in a couple of interviews from when the previous album came out, you're talking about how it wasn't necessary. It was like you were focusing more on writing the songs as opposed to like creating an album itself and everything like that. Did you try and, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I read somewhere that this was some sort of a concept album. So did you work on trying to really put that album in like a start to finish 45-minute type of deal on this one?
Yeah. Like, this one's very much written as a concept record. And actually something that narrowed down over time. Like, I think we started with a broader concept and we had a body of songs within it. And then we started to realize we were both naturally writing towards a more narrow concept, a more specific idea.
Interesting.
But ultimately,
I'll pick your brain about that in a second, but please keep going.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a long album, my friend. We have time. But specifically to your question on order, I think there were certain things that we knew, like we always knew Between the Sea and Stars was going to be the closer.
It has to be.
But originally, actually, we had Ruin and the Penitent penciled in as the opener. And we did kind of have a moment, because it is a bit of a song cycle, and I think in the song sort of revolve around a particular event without needing to have an order.
Yeah.
And realized that it would be better for us to focus on sequencing a record that listened really well as a record, as opposed to like, if the 1% of listeners who pay enough attention to the lyrics really enjoy that order. Like, I don't think Incarnadine lyrically makes a ton of sense as the opener, but musically we felt it was the best choice, and we decided that that was the more important role to play. Like, it's not wrong.
Yeah.
It's just
not quite as linear. But we did this record, definitely we approached much
extremely deliberately.
Extremely deliberately. Like, I was surprised when you said somewhat.
Yeah.
Because
the somewhat comes from the not being ordered in concept order, whereas musical order.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And we were both kind of independently writing songs, so it wasn't like we came together like, okay, we're gonna write, you know, this many songs and slot them into these spots. But we had just both been writing.
By the end.
We did get there by the end, definitely. But this was one that we were approaching much more intentionally, just in terms of lyrics, because the first and concept is the first record. I think, as you said from the previous interviews, these were kind of our first pass at creating this band and creating our sound. And so, honestly, for myself, a lot of the time, I was just saying, you know, I think these lyrics fit with kind of what I'm trying to say, or kind of the vibe of the song. I'm not going to overthink it too much. I'm not going to get too bogged down in it, because I feel like it's easier to overanalyze lyrics kind of in that earlier stage of a band and composition. And so they kind of were what they were, and you know, they fit with the songs and everything. But yeah, this record was definitely approached a lot more.
I love the ending of this song.
Yeah,
I was at the like almost like, what would you call it, like Hans Zimmer strings that are in the background punctuating this thing. It's fucking good.
So yeah, no, it is a lot more conceptual, and so I don't think I would have minded too much if someone read the lyrics or not on our last record, but I hope that people will pay attention to the lyrics a bit more on this record. I think
the lyrics on the first album were good. They just the songs didn't have anything to do with each other. They were just individual pieces.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know. And I also love the idea that it's like, you know, of course, you know, you're learning how to walk on the last record and everything like that, right? And now you're kind of, you know, trying to, you know, kind of what you want to do, and you're trying new things and getting it out there. Unfortunately, I was just, I didn't have the lyrics in front of me for this specific record, but I have been like listening to them, so I'm very excited to dig into them, because also I've only had this album for like maybe a little bit less than a week and a half, so I know that I haven't had it for very long, which I know that there is going to be, you know, in 3 months months or whatever, there's going to be stuff that like, unfurls to me and things like that. So, so the double-edged sword about getting albums early, but then having to talk about them early too, because you don't have so much time to absorb them.
I get that totally. Makes sense.
But I mean, that's great to hear that you, upon listening to it for that period of time, you feel like you'll still have more to get from it over time.
Yes.
There's definitely, even when I'm listening to it and being very intimately familiar with all of the pieces, I still, pay more attention to a certain piece on one listen than the other listen, and be like, oh yeah, I remember that little thing that we did. That was a cool little bit that thing did. So
yeah, and even with the dual vocal delivery too, is a lot of it is trying to, at first, kind of make sense of the lyrics, or even just like understand the lyrics through some of the growls and things like that, right? But then
certainly, I don't think anybody can understand what I'm saying much of the time.
I gotta get word. I've got to fight. I speak
words
mental,
here and
my
there.
friend. Yeah, exactly. It's not like listening to who was I just listening to recently? Mortician. Can't understand.
Oh
word.
yeah, that would
It's
be
like,
that'd be right.
But what I was going to say too is, figuring out kind of like the intent behind, why is there like clean vocals right here, or why is there harsh vocals right here? Like, what is, the thought process behind those as well, and what's it mean to the song, and how is this emotion going through?
I think that goes back and forth, because sometimes that's a bit conceptual, or like there's some songs where there's a bit of a point of view where you might have characters going back and forth.
Yeah.
But like, I think that's a thing on The Path. I think that's a bit of a thing on Incarnadine. But on a lot of other songs, I say most of the record, it's what sounds good.
yeah,
And a lot of stuff, it's quite common in our songwriting to test things out either way. Have bits that were clean go harsh, or were harsh go clean, to just be like, what sounds good. Oftentimes when I'm writing, like, actually, it's interesting, for the Thorn Choked Flowers, most of that song was dominated by clean vocals when I first wrote it. And it was just some really, honestly, kind of meandering melodies that weren't really going anywhere or doing anything for me. And I kind of had that thought of, we could shift this to being much more of a death doom crusher.
Yeah.
And kind of toss that stuff and focus on the heaviness. And it opened up much more when we did that.
And I sometimes have the experience of there'll be some part in a song that I've written, and I feel like I just will tend to write things with more clean vocals, like melodic stuff, just because that's kind of just my intuition and what I do. And so there'll sometimes be times when I've gotten really attached to a vocal line, but then we just realize this would sound better if it was a harsh vocal. And so sometimes it's it can be tough to let go of that, but ultimately it's happened many times where I'm like, okay, that was the right call, instead of just trying to push it to make it work with the names. Something really interesting that we did with that in the Penitent is in that second verse of it. We've been really struggling with this second verse for a long time. It became this weird thing in the band where we were all just going crazy trying to
Without Answer was that song on the first album. The Penitent was that song on this album.
And so that one, it was clean vocals for the longest time, and
it felt kind of repetitive to the first verse because you'd already had a lot of those ideas come up.
And it's pretty basic on the drums. And so we ended up swapping it to harsh vocals. But then we had, I swapped over to doing an approximation of the vocal melody on the cello instead. So it was kind of a thing where I'm like, okay, I can still keep these kind of specific vocal ideas I had, or melodic ideas, but in a way that I think serves the song much better. So I definitely have learned to be I'm not possessive. I don't think of like, I have to sing this, or Etienne has to do that. So I think Etienne is going and looking for beer in the fridge.
Hell yeah.
There's only a bunch of strange beer in the fridge right now. We have
You feel about a frightening chocolate hedgehog.
I don't want that. We had a winter ale fest earlier this year, and it's like a beer potluck for a lot of strange beers, and so some strange things get left over in my fridge. Thank you for this indulging this interlude. We search some strange beers.
No, please.
Fridge.
This is we get into like the real like ethos and personality of people on this. Listening to a record with someone, you find out a lot about them.
It is nice to have that slightly more relaxed, that longer time frame to dig into ideas a bit more.
Yes.
Sometimes on interviews things will be really, really tight, fast. Got to get everything out as quickly as possible, or you feel like oh, I wish I talked about this, or feel like you've got words left unsaid on something.
Oh, I always feel like that no matter what. But no, I like sometimes I feel like, I always try and tell the PRs of the bands, like, this is going to be a little bit of a longer interview. It's just not going to be your like 20-minute rapid fire type of deal, because I just found that people open up a little bit more when they're talking about music that they love, as opposed to like the music that they have to talk about or something like that sometimes. Which sometimes is great, because like y'all have been very open about, how you create music, and very insightful for that as well. But I've also known that kind of like leaning on the album as not necessarily a crutch, but just as a cornerstone, definitely helps some people kind of go along.
Yeah, and this is, I feel like, the way that both of us socialize 90% of the time.
We have spent a great quantity of time sitting on this couch listening to doom metal albums.
Yes.
Talking about metal. It's the cornerstone of our relationship.
It's important in the community.
Yeah.
Seriously, no, it's what I wish I could do a lot more.
So yeah, here we've got like a more interesting, like kind of more atmospheric slow builder. Because it feels like it almost starts ballady with that dominance of the piano, but then you have the drums,
the bass fade in. That's what I didn't even notice the bass at first, but then just the way that it's mixed, it presents itself without you even knowing, almost.
Yeah, so it's got more drive to it than I think later. It'll be I Almost Loved You. It'll be a bit more of a For My Fallen Angel style, My Dying Bride ballad. That'll venture a bit into, if I dare drop the C word, cringe territory. But it'll be fun.
I'll open a can of worms right here, though, which I'm sure that if you ask 10 different people to have 10 different answers, what do you think are your top favorite My Dying Bride albums?
For me, this my one. This is huge to me.
Cool.
Honestly, I feel like 2015 was an incredible year for Doom, between this and Swallow the Sun, Songs from the North, and Draconian Sovereign, which I think is my number one favorite Doom album of all time.
Yeah.
I'm getting off point of your question. Top favorites also include, I really like, I think Turn Loose the Swans is overrated. Love it. Set the foundation for the style, but I think that they would go on to more exciting things later. Really love Angel in the Dark River.
Okay.
Is also there. Songs of Darkness, Words of Light. And did you ask for 3 or 5?
No, I just asked for like whatever you thought. I'm sure that you could go into more.
That's my Dying Bride ramble for now.
There you go.
Yeah, I think I'm much. I feel like I'm a more simple My Dying Bride listener, in that I feel like I mostly listen to this record, Turn Loose the Swans and Angel in the Dark River, and those are pretty much what I have on when I turn to My Dying Bride, which obviously leaves many gaps in the middle. And I think that's something that they're a band that I feel like I'm always still kind of exploring. Like, there are records that I'm like, oh, I haven't listened to this that much, and then I'll find things that are really interesting on there.
But they're like extremely consistent. Like, I think most of their mid-career is stuff that has a solid sound. Like, there's 35% complete, which is like weird electronic experimentation, and then there's like they're like old school death metal as the flower withers. Those, I think, are the only 2 records that you're really going to get a real curveball out of.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, and you said, 35% complete came out in 98. Just metal was not in a good place at that point.
It was a weird time for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that was about
the
time.
Not for me, I was 3. But,
Yeah, I was 9 years old at that point. So I don't have a whole lot of like first-hand experience there, but like I did I love Creator, and I did a discography dive last year on them, because I had never gone through like all of their records, just like only their big ones. And yeah, around that time of Endorama and everything, where they tried to do a gothic, almost like My Dying Bride thing.
Grunge and new metal did weird things to the heavy metal.
So like lost their fucking identity for a little bit. It's like, what are we doing?
So speaking of circling back, getting to circle back around to things, I totally forgot to mention Mortal Binding, the newest My Dying Bride record. I really love. I haven't finished my year-end list from last year because I'm a terminal procrastinator.
Sure.
But it's top 5, maybe top 3. I felt like Ghost of Orion was a bit of a step down for them compared to Field of Misery, but I think their most recent is on that top level again.
Didn't they go through like a fuck ton of like personal shit during the Ghost of Orion? Is what I was reading.
They did. It has some great material on it.
Yeah.
I think your Broken Shore is like a top 5 favorite My Dying Bride song for me. But it's very filler heavy record with a lot of really long interludes and tracks that don't justify their length to my ear. But their new one is really one of the things that makes it such a shame about Aaron is, and they're kind of split right now,
Yeah.
is because just released, I think, one of the strongest records of their late career.
Wow. Yeah, I've listened to the singles because, like I mentioned, I stream on Twitch, and a lot of that of what I do is playing new music and keeping up to date on bands such as yourselves. But I wanted to have more experience with like classic and older My Dying Bride and like their actual discography before jumping into that one. Kind of like the exact opposite of what I did with the latest Catatonia record, which I think is why I liked it so much, is because I didn't have the history of their early death doom metals. Exactly. Yeah.
I'd say they're very different from My Dying Bride, and like I said, My Dying Bride I think really found what they wanted to do with like the light at the end of the world, and they've been kind of more or less like variation album to album, but not massively. Whereas Catatonia has such a massive arc through their career, and it'll be interesting to see. Now where they go from here. They're literally the back patch on this jacket. Is Catatonia?
Hell yeah, yeah, let's go. Yeah, I've been, there's so many bands recently that I've been like known for the longest time, but have just like never cracked into. Like Borknagar was another one of those, because just massive discography that goes back a long time and that had changed.
It can be so intimidating. They got so many records.
Yeah. So what I started doing is I would just take, I would kind of look on YouTube, or I'd see like on Spotify what were like the 2 or 3 like most streamed songs, or what were the singles or whatever, and I would just spend an evening being like, all right, we're gonna queue up like 15 songs across the discography and just kind of see what we like and see where see where we go from there. And it's been really good, if not very, very busy a lot of times. And most of the time, I'm like, I listened to this record. It says Spotify says that I like these songs. I don't remember listening to this record, but apparently I did.
It's a good problem to have so much great metal music out there.
Yeah, and I mean, you were talking about bands putting out like strong mid-career albums and stuff like that. I feel like we're in a spot right now where even bands that are just starting to get going are really pushing the envelope, and I feel like some of the legacy bands that have been around are feeling that heat a little bit and also putting out really good records. Whether it's like Judas Priest's latest record was fucking incredible. I really like the new Cradle of Filth record that just came out. I've liked Cradle of Filth for a long time. I thought they did a really fucking good job on the new stuff, which
I heard the singles on it. They're solid, so I'm curious to dive in.
There's a lot of maiden worship on it, which obviously I like. And then also, because of the new members that they had in the band, there's a lot more they had a little bit more spirit of like Midian or Damnation in a Day or something like that, which is the
Midian would be my favorite.
So yeah, exactly. That was the time that I found them and stuff like that. So there's a lot of that on the new record, but
there were hits on the last Guardian record also, which I was surprised by, like Violent Shadows. That's
Violent
quite a banger.
Secrets of the American Gods is still stuck in my head, Soren. It is so fucking good.
I feel like that's the one single that like I didn't get that down with, but I'm happy for you. I always want to love New Blind Guardian, but there's hits for sure. Blood of the Elves and Violent Shadows are both.
It also just felt like a tighter record. Like it wasn't like super long.
Yes, no, that's what I loved about it, because I discovered them on the first record that I heard from them was Somewhere Far Beyond, and that is still to this day my favorite Blind Guardian record. And I thought that after the kind of explorations that Blind Guardian did in the 2000s, where they were like lots of orchestrations and all of these vocal melodies, they were just like, hey, let's dial it back just a little bit, and it was just more of like your classic 90s speed metal, power metal record, and I fucking loved it. It was one of my favorite albums of that year.
Yeah, it was really exciting for me to hear some like proper speed metal riffs from Guardian, and they're still doing their nerdy thing, doing like a Witcher themed songs and everything. But I mean, I still like Night at the Opera, but after that, not so much. But Night at the Opera it is like at the maximum, I think, but you still have to have really big great choruses that kind of justify how huge it is, and it does, I think. But then latter records, I feel like I have not felt like the payoff isn't there quite as much. Like if you listen to it and then there was silence for like 10 minutes and then the chorus comes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is great. I will listen to this for so much longer. But yeah, definitely the kind of meandering thing. I guess that can happen to a lot of bands if you just, I don't know, you've been around for a long time, it gets harder to edit yourself, probably.
Yeah. Which, and I was thinking that when you guys were talking about it as well, is like, no, seriously, self-editing, I feel like is one of the hardest things, if not the hardest things for bands to do. You know, how long something should be, how short something should be, how long the album should be, how long, you know, the song should be, all of that. And with the band where it was just like, more, it just felt like, I don't know, there was like an era of power metal where it was just like, you just shove everything that you could possibly do. You know, I love Epica, right? But you know,
they're so bad for that. Yeah,
yeah.
Like I love them, but they're like, we got 78 minutes on the CD, and you're getting everyone.
Yeah, exactly. So I appreciate. You know, because there's nothing. I like a long record. We're listening to a long record right now, and I think that this length is justified for what is on this record. But yeah, just a nice tight 45, 50 minutes. Maybe a little bit more if you've got some really good fucking songs, but that's it.
I think one of the weirdest gifts I think we had on this record was that we ultimately were aiming for a release on a single vinyl LP.
Yeah.
And that's what we budgeted for. And it's a very vinyl forward label, so it's important.
Yes.
Like they gave us, it wasn't like something they forced on us necessarily, but we had options. But it strongly made the most sense for us to produce an album that would fit on a single LP. And we had that goal. Like, I think this album peaked at like 53 minutes or something. But we cut a solid chunk of, like, not even like cutting a whole song, but just like 30 seconds here, a minute there. And it was sometimes painful, but honestly, every song I look back on and I go, I don't miss that stuff. It's better. But it was really good to have the prompting to go through that. And sometimes, frankly, I wonder if that's part of why 20 Bucks Spin is such a label with so much buzz, is because they do the vinyl forward thing. And that kind of, there's that pressure on bands to just, because so much classic metal from back in the day was just single LP stuff by the very nature.
And they would fucking hammer it out too, like fucking, you know, 3 albums in 3 years and shit like that.
But having to edit for that format, I think, is really cool to make. Certainly for music like ours, it's very easy to get expansive and stretchy.
Yes.
Yeah, it was quite a process that I remember we had a big spreadsheet going of like side A, side B, and we're like, what are all the various configurations that we can do to possibly make this fit?
Because it is like a tightly fit record, and so the more you're stretching what an LP can fit, the more you need the two, because the limit isn't what the album as a whole can fit, it's what any side can fit.
Yes.
So you can fit more music if your sides are as close to equal length as possible.
Yes, and our sides ended up very well balanced, which we were both very pleased with. They're very, very similar lengths. But yeah, I definitely remember at the beginning days of that spreadsheet thinking like, oh God, like how are we gonna get there? Because
we had really good buy-in from both of us for the process.
Yeah. So. And I think neither of us are adverse to editing things down. Like it always feels painful at first, but I think what has made our writing dynamic so good is that we're both not kind of just precious about our riffs. Like there'll be certain times when, you know, one of us will have to express like, you know, actually this is like my favorite riff in the whole thing and we need to work around it. But other than that, like you
don't play that card very often, so it means something when you do.
Yes,
and I think we just have that kind of that respect and that dynamic.
Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely been times when it's having to cut a significant chunk out of one or the other of our songs, but it's definitely not a thing I think either of us take personally. There's always a little bit of a sad like, oh, I like that riff, but sometimes it gets saved for something else later, and you know, it just wasn't the right place and the right time, and even now when I think back on our record, it's hard to, off the top of my head, think like, okay, what were all of the big cuts that I remember made?
There was a really nice chunk in the middle of the Penitent where it like got like acoustically chill again, and then there was like a nice cello solo, and that was the most Kill Your Darlings moment for me because I loved that part and I thought it was so cool. But the bridge of that song used to be like a full minute longer, and like I said, it was the problem song of the record.
Yeah.
And when we cut the bridge down and we tightened it up, it was like, okay, we've literally cut my favorite part of the song out, but it flows so much better now. It feels better. This has served the song. Even if I hate to see this part go, there's lots of cello soloing over this progression in the interlude track Ruin anyway, so you don't need this.
Yeah.
And that was something that came, I think, more from playing it live, because if that was one that I feel like I wrote a lot. I wrote a lot by myself, and I think I wrote a bit too much in Guitar Pro in the sense of just not playing it live.
You will give me things where I have to explain to you it's not physically possible.
I've written drum parts in Guitar Pro for drummers who looked at me like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Move.
Yeah, exactly.
How many hands do you think I have?
Yeah, I have to think about that often. I'm like, okay, 2 hands. Where are they going? But yeah, it was something that I think when I was kind of playing it to myself as an idea, it seemed like, I don't know, it seemed more elegant. But then when we would play it live in the space together, it just felt like the energy kind of dropped, and everyone else is waiting around. It's just myself and Dallas playing for a bit, and that's something that definitely with all of the songs wouldn't have had that unless we were able to have that time like in the space. And also having everybody engaged in the process is so great, because everyone's got their own musical backgrounds, but I think is like quite united in serving the ultimate vision of the project. So it's always great to get different ideas like on these issues. But honestly, it's always the biggest relief when the solution is just to cut it.
Yeah,
it always is painful, but like that's happened so many times. We're like, what if we just
didn't do this thing?
Yeah, at the beginning in Armoured and in Shadow, there's the
oh, there was a gap at the beginning, and we went back and we wanted like some kind of drum fill there, or maybe a guitar lick. And I remember this feeling in my soul: we should just play nothing. We should just have a chunk of silence. And then after we had been workshopping it for what felt like 100 years, but really it was probably 5 minutes, I was like, what if we just did nothing? And it was great.
And it was the best. It was the best song. We tried so many drum fills. Like, oh, great.
There's gonna be some painkiller stuff.
Yeah.
And I think we've gotten a bit off topic on the record here as time flies, but this is one of my favorite songs.
Within a Sleeping Forest. I wanted just
Soren riffs back.
Yeah, dude, the way that the last song, which is like, I know the first song is about his father dying, but I swear that last song is the most devastating song on the record, musically and like almost lyrically and stuff like that. But the way it flows in to this song is like, I feel like they're almost like kind of what we were talking about, 2 pieces of a bigger movement almost.
Totally.
It's really good sequencing.
It's a two disc 4-side LP. So whenever I listen to it, all the songs come in those packages of 2 on vinyl. And so they'd be on the same side. So I totally get that sense. So they flow together.
I love the organ, like bringing the organ here with this. It's got a sparser musical arrangement, the big organs and the harsh vocals. It's very striking. I really like that. And that's, I think, a really cool thing about Doom is you can leave so much space in there, and it still sounds huge. Like, there's not a whole lot going on, but just I don't know.
Like, you need space to fit stuff. Because like if you had more stuff going up like high on the guitars and that, you'd be conflicting with that. Or this was something we learned so much about making this record.
Yeah.
Your frequencies clash if you just try to put a million things on top of each other at once. And we'd so often go in and be like, okay, we've got a harpsichord and a piano and 2 guitars, 2 vocalists and a cello. Can this all be really loud and cut through?
Yeah.
And it can't be. And it goes back to sometimes your answer for what makes up our work is cutting layers out.
Yeah.
So you don't do that.
Yeah, there was some sad. I feel like right at the end of the mixing process when we were in the studio with our engineer Jesse Gander, when we were going just at the very ends of things, and there were some riffs where we couldn't, like the piano would sound just like a little bit off or something, or some part just wouldn't sound quite heavy enough, and we ended up there was a few key parts on keys that ended up getting cut kind of right at the last minute, and it felt really strange to cut them, because sometimes there would be, it was a distinct melody that had been going on there for a really long time, but then ultimately found that when you take it when you just have it drop out completely, it's it really changes the shape of it.
And like in a mix, like your space, certainly in a metal mix, all the space in the mix is generally filled. So if you want something to sound bigger, you want something to sound fuller, you want it to sound heavier, the question has to be, what are you taking out? Like, if you want a heftier guitar sound on this riff, what part of the song are you taking out to create space to fit
Interesting.
that even
Yeah.
louder, that even, broader guitar sound?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I've never thought about it that way before, but obviously I haven't, gone through the trials and tribulations of making a fucking Doom record before. But that's like you have water in a jug, right? You can't put more shit in without it overflowing, right?
There were days making this record, I was like, wow, I understand why dudes just like start a black and thrash trio and
Yeah.
bring up this would be, we had like a one guitarist and a bass player. This would be like so much more musically simple, but it's so worth it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it, so hell yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of parts in this record where I was more, I stopped playing bass for a lot more spots on this record. I think that was something that felt really odd to me to do on the first record, because previously when I played in bands, I've just only played bass. This is my first, like, this band is the first project where I've done vocals, and I think in the process of the time between when the first record was released and when the next record was recorded, we'd spent so much more time playing live that I think both of us became a lot more confident as vocalists.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
And
Yeah.
much better.
Your vocals on this new record are so good.
Yes,
Thank
they
you.
are.
Your
They're
vocals
stuck in
sound
my
great.
head all the time.
So I think that we got kind of, at least, got more confident, or I got more confident just having times where it's just, okay, I'm just doing a vocal feature here. And even live, this is something I think that I think about more because I've played live, but when there's a part where I'm just doing a vocal feature, I'll often just swing my bass away to the side. I have like my bass with like strap locks, and so my live situation is that when I play cello, I just swing the bass to the side and go play
Yeah.
cello. And,
I was gonna ask, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very specific setup, but I've been having fun lately having the parts where it's just kind of a vocal feature or quiet verse, just swinging the bass to the side completely and not playing bass at all, and just focusing on the vocal performance. And I found it feels really good live, and you can see people connecting to it more live.
Yeah.
And there's parts in the past that I used to play bass on and live, and I don't anymore live, because it just kind of feels better. It feels more natural. I can kind of lean into that role a bit more at the time. And so on this record, we definitely have more spaces where it's just totally quiet. I'm just not playing bass for a little bit, which was strange, like feeling like a bassist first, but
Yeah.
wearing many hats. I'm just gonna get my dog's looking for something important over
That's
here.
totally fine. I'll hold the thought that I was about to say on this. I cannot believe that we were almost through this record, dude. We got 4 minutes
I
left.
was genuinely concerned that this would be, we've just sitting here going like, what else do I have to say?
Yeah.
This is also a riff, yes.
Well, yeah,
But no, it's
exactly.
not us.
Well, most of the time, on generally the way that these shows go is that it's a little bit awkward at first, and then by the time that we're done, we're like, oh shit, the album ended 20 minutes ago, and we've still been like wrapping up our song and everything like that. But yeah, I was curious because that was something that I was trying. I'll do this a little bit more, as I said, I listened to the album further, but that was something that I was kind of trying to listen for in the mix, as far as like, oh, do I hear bass here? Or like, is there bass but no, or is there cello but no bass, or is there bass all the way through and stuff like that? I can't say that I've really noticed it too much yet, just because I'm still like absorbing everything. But I figured that was probably the case, as far as like, just double fisting the cello and the bass on stage.
Because
and
also
everything
goes
like
back
that.
to our comments about sort of live being a very different thing than on record.
Yeah.
On record, there's bass more or less everywheres, or at least most of the heavier spots, and is double tracked with the cello.
Yeah.
But then we take a different approach to it live.
Yeah, because you have to,
sometimes
basically, yeah.
It's just not there. Sometimes it's covered by low-end keyboards. Sometimes it's covered. I have a octave modeling effect that I kick in live. We don't use backing tracks at all, which is something that I think
impressive.
proud of.
Congrats. The few, the proud. Congrats.
You know, right? Certainly for music this complex.
Yeah.
But we do different things. I've never felt like we were missing the bass guitar.
Like when we're playing live.
We're playing live, yeah.
Yeah,
On cello parts.
And yeah, we definitely we love to play live, and I think that live performance is just such an important part of being a musician, at least for myself. So everything we write very intentionally that with like we will be able to play this live. We have to be able to play this live. And then there's
like not exactly the way it is on record, but it has to be great.
Yeah, and so not that we need to go put a backing track on it or something. So yeah, there's sometimes where we'll swap a melody on cello when I'm like playing cello and singing or something, and I don't do that live. Yeah, we'll swap it to the keys or something, or yeah, just figure out other ways to thicken up the low end if I'm not playing bass. But that's always something we think about that a lot more when we're writing now. And that wasn't something that we were thinking about when we were writing the song for the first record, because the songs on the first record were written even with when I was playing cello with the band, because at first I was only playing bass, so we kind of added it on. But now when we're writing, we're like, okay, where am I going to switch from that? Is there going to be enough time for me to switch from cello to bass, or like from vocals to cello or whatever? And so there's like a lot of little things that are put in there for a very functional reason. But that's very important to both of us. Like we love playing live, and we don't want people to feel like they're missing something.
Or it's like a half or like a flat version of this song, so they hear on record or something like that. I mean, it makes sense. And like one of the things like I love about talking to y'all is just knowing and hearing and seeing how much thought y'all put into just like every little facet of the band. And I know that gets down to, because we haven't even talked about like the artwork and like the way that the album's packaged and everything like that. 'Cause Soren, I know that you've done the artwork for both this album and the previous one, which amazing shit. I might have to have you do a tattoo for me one of these days, because your shit is just so great.
For sure.
But yeah, so what I guess to get into that real quick, because again, we're flying through this album, just what kind of did you have in mind with the art to flesh out the music that you guys were creating for this? Because I know, especially like people don't do it anymore, but when they're flipping through, the record stores and seeing the vinyl, especially with music as evocative like this,
it's seen our own vinyl, and that is an incredible experience.
That's the coolest. I'm old enough that I remember like going to the shop, looking through CDs and buying records, like CDs based off having a really cool cover. And so I am a very visual person. Like I care a lot about the kind of image that a record has, and whenever I'm listening to it, I'm always thinking about the album art in my head. And so I think when we're writing, I have like a pretty clear image like of each song in my head. And are we wrapped up?
Yes, the album finished. Yeah, we're gonna start getting into the Ghosts of Orion after this.
So anyways, I feel like it's always something that's been very important to me, and I have kind of a vision or colors kind of in my head. And the last record with the album art was something that we were kind of gesturing vaguely at kind of motifs that we've used, like aesthetic motifs and things that kind of relating to time and memory and these more kind of vague concepts. But it was also about kind of creating like an aesthetic vision for the project, and I kind of wanted people to be drawn into that world. Like, this is the kind of world I want you to imagine while you're in this record.
Yeah, which home run on that, by the way.
I'm glad. I've heard a lot of feedback like that about the record, which it feels great to me, because that's something when I'm listening to a record, I care about that so much. So with this record, we had a lot more back and forth about what exactly it would, what the image would be. So there was some kind of dynamic between Etienne and myself where I was thinking something a bit more along the lines of having some kind of more menacing looking like institution of justice, because a lot of the record is about like how we deal with wrongdoing in society, and how various society's response to that and individual response to that.
It's kind of, I guess if that's the important context for that question, is like the specific concept record is sort of about like very vaguely sketched, and I think the idea is to create a lot of space for interpretation. But there is kind of the penitent is sort of this central character who's done something severely wrong, and the idea is you have this sort of cycle of songs that look at that from different perspectives. And for example, Incarnadine is looking at that from the perspective of a relationship. Somebody who loves you a lot, could be romantic, doesn't have to be. Like a wound unhealing is sort of that like anger and desire for retribution from somebody who like cares for the victim, and then the sword of the slain looks at it from the perspective of like the justice system or the more formal judicial institutions of society. So that's kind of its all the concept of the record.
Yeah.
So
go back to the art.
So it engages a lot with kind of ideas of concepts of justice and how those shift throughout times, and that ended up, that kind of idea of our kind of a concept of justice not being fixed or not being completely set was something that influenced the direction that we took. Because when I was talking about this more menacing institution of justice, like I was picturing having like a small figure up against this big institution, like kind of more Kafka-esque kind of image. But Etienne was your response to that was you were thinking like you didn't want the record to feel necessarily like menacing, like it would still need to be kind of like beauty in it.
It's a tough balance because you want to communicate the meaning of the record, but at least for me, I had that sense of not wanting it to feel unpleasant in that certain way. Like obviously the first record's cover is macabre, but it's also beautiful in its own way. And certainly for something like you're going to be sticking on T-shirts, or we're going to be staring at all the time for years of our lives.
This when people bring around, this is the back of the album, just like all the time, just like there it is. You can't change it now.
Not wanting an image that ultimately felt unpleasant to me, which is just like a personal thing, not like a right or wrong. But I think we found our way to something I think we were both really happy with, and we wanted something as well. We've always been very interested in evoking an aesthetic of timelessness. So trying not to really feel like, oh, this is modern, or like this is Victorian, or this is medieval, or whatever. But you can place the album and the band's aesthetic where you want to a certain extent, as much as reasonably possible.
Yeah, and I think that the taking it into this ruin kind of side of things ended up softening that image, and so having it be kind of this ruined, overgrown institution of justice, and I think it ended up fitting conceptually better, because all these ideas that we're grappling with, it's grappling with various human intuitions about how to respond to things, and how that affects different people and all of the different emotions that like remorse or guilt or pain, depending who you are. These are all complex emotions that we don't have kind of a singular answer to, but at different periods of time, like the way that we deal with wrong and wrongdoing can be treated as, okay, this is the law, and this is the law handed down by God, and this is the only way it can be. But there are so many things that are left out of that, which I think we explore a lot in this record. So I like the way that we have the art kind of representing like a place of kind of justice or judgment, but in a way that it's ruined, it's been overgrown, and to me, so it evokes that this is one idea of justice among many that could exist throughout time, and I think just like having a bit more of the organic elements there through the vines, and it's in this kind of vaguely surreal space with a very purpley sky and everything. I think it takes it out of a specific moment, and and I feel like it has a more contemplative kind of vibe to it than before. We had like discourse in the band chat about the angle of the statue, because there was a while where I had it where it kind of looked like you were like a worm or someone kneeling on the ground looking up at the statue, and it looked much more menacing. But this I feel like it gives more of a sense of you're entering into this more contemplative, still place, which I think is a bit more in line with the kind of reflection that we hope people will have based on the record.
Yeah, and for whether consciously or not, or on purpose or not, I also have a bit of a supernatural thought when I think about this band as well. Just from some of the lyrics, could be the first record could be interpreted as like ghosts and things like that. I feel like, or a spirit, talking from beyond, or not knowing that they're dead, or all of those different things that work within the context of doom metal as well. Because I think a lot of doom does sort of have a tendency to go Victorian, macabre, supernatural stuff like that. And I think that having the sky and the stars and everything really helps kind of draw that in. And I'm glad that you went with that, because it feels more open, and almost is sort of like sinister but yet inviting as well. Like, hey, come here.
Mhm.
It's probably not going to be good, but you come in and see what our kind
Yeah.
of dance of death is going to be like. You know?
It really felt like one of those things that so often happens with us. We'll have our distinct ideas and we'll go back and forth on it a bunch,
Mhm.
and we'll engage pretty deeply, and then we'll come together to something I think really synthesizes what both of us are really looking for.
Mhm.
Mm,
And we both ended up really happy with what the
Mhm.
cover looks like. And that's something I've
yeah.
always really appreciated, because I think,
Mhm.
like, obviously you're the artist who's actually
Mhm.
drawing it, and I'm
Hmm.
just that guy being like, yeah, that's great. I don't know about that. But I feel like it reflects both of our visions.
Mhm.
So I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Mhm. And yeah, that was something that we definitely it was nice to be able to engage with the whole band
Mhm.
on
Mm.
that. Jess from our band is also a great artist who does all the art for her project. So yeah, also great having other kind of everyone is aesthetically minded. Jess is very aesthetically
Yeah.
minded. Having other other people with can get into that kind of detail with me has been great. But yeah, I think it was nice to have the kind of discourse with everybody and have this kind of coming together. So
Yeah, and then the last thing I'll say on the art is I'm also really glad you were able to work in the scale, and now that's like the almost like the symbol of the band
Yeah.
now
I
over there.
really like having those visual motifs.
Yeah, was that
I love how the
planned?
color motif is there. It's still the purple to purple.
Yeah,
mhm.
But
yeah,
where the
exactly.
first
Yes,
album has the secondary color is more gold. This one, the secondary color is more green. So
yes,
there's
yes.
an evolution, but a consistency.
Mhm.
Mhm. I also love purple albums just to begin with. My background is them by King Diamond on my computer right now. Just so
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. I
perfect.
love, yeah, we're both big Purple fans.
Yeah.
We're a very Purple forward band.
Yeah.
So I had to make sure that there was some Purple incorporated
The
Hell
Siakra
somewhere.
yeah.
River sky.
Yeah, I'm a very big fan of purple. I think blue is my favorite color, but in the
Mhm.
last house that my partner and I lived in, I painted two accent walls in our living room, a deep royal purple, and it was perfect. It was great. Um, all right, so before we wrap up and get to the end and everything like that, we were talking about holy shit, that My Dying Bride album went by really, really quick, but we had good conversation. I wanted to touch on that last song real quick because I thought just real quick, I thought that it was so interesting. The lyrics of that one basically are about like it seems like a song about another friend or singer talking about Orpheus, which I think a song
Mhm.
from the point of view of someone singing about Orpheus is like a
Mhm.
really nice, like creative, inventive way to put a song in. And yeah, just a really, really cool closer to that album.
Feel like I
No,
can only think about Baldur's Gate Orpheus right now.
no, I know Aaron is quite well read as a lyricist and puts a lot of effort into really telling stories and not
Mhm.
Yes.
just, that was something I struggled with a bit when I first started writing lyrics for Tribunal. I would be like, oh, I'm sad sometimes. We're a doom metal band, and I'm just going to write lyrics about feeling sad.
Mhm.
And the no, it just
Mhm.
wasn't that interesting. It wasn't that
Mhm.
insightful. People have felt sad before. They know what that's
Mhm.
like. So trying to get more into the realm of that storytelling and creating a narrative and creating that atmosphere to draw people in and having those details like pick up on like, the myth of Orpheus rather than just, and sometimes even when the listener doesn't necessarily know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They know there's something there to grab it. Like, I thought it was interesting you're talking about like sort of the supernatural on our first
Mhm.
record, because that's not. I see where you get that from, but
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
not really something I think we were trying to channel at all.
Mhm.
But it's
definitely.
cool. It's cool to have that space for interpretation and that kind of space for the listener to bring their own context into it and
Hmm.
hear something a little different, because lyrics can conjure a lot of emotion, but you don't necessarily have a lot of space to lay things out super clearly. So
Mhm.
you
Right.
kind of have to leave space and let people take it as they will.
And having a little bit of that kind of intertextuality going on, like with these references,
Yeah.
I like that a lot. You can draw on a lot of other. It yeah, just gives you something else, like a whole other source to color it. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's something that we in Incarnadine certainly is like has Macbeth references. It's very Macbethy song, so I feel like if you have that in your brain, it'll bring a lot of other color to the song. But it's something that I think you can still enjoy independently. But having familiarity with this other story or this other work can bring this other depth into the song. I think that's just one of the coolest things about being an artist, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, and well, I'll save it for the next time that we talk, because I was going to talk about what type of like films and cinemas and literature and all that other stuff, but I think we'll be here for another 2 hours if I fire that
that's
one
a
up.
risky topic. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So I had it down here, but who knows if we were going to get to it or not. But yeah, so that was My Dying Bride's Feel the Misery. Thoughts, parting words about that album before we wrap up for the night.
love it. It feels a bit inappropriate. We've simply had too good of a time here with you tonight
Yeah.
to say that we felt the misery. But
Seriously.
yeah, I really enjoy that album. Huge influence on what we do. And
yeah, no, it was great listening through it. There's always I resisted the urge to karaoke some of the hits. So
I'll get you next time you guys come on the show. I'm going to make sure that you do it. You do karaoke.
Great. I love karaoke.
You up Nightfall in Middle Earth.
Yeah,
that's a disaster for me.
Yes, please.
The last time I saw Blind Guardian, I was at a festival where I was like right front row. I had traveled an absurd distance to get to this festival just in time, and I was right at the front. And they have like the big screens like where they were showing the fans.
Yeah.
And I realized one time when I'm a very passionate singer alonger at shows, and I saw that they were like showing my face while I was singing along, and I was like, oh man. And then I looked, and then they kept showing my face for like the whole.
No one else in the crowd was giving it like you.
I was. It's like, oh man, yeah, it's a very passionate Blind Guardian singer. Anyways, I forget what I was talking about, but it's great to listen to that record. I always enjoy it, and obviously we can go on forever about our music stuff. We're both like very overthinking people to begin with, so I think you put both of us.
I'm right in
like
there
to
with that
talk
club.
about
Where would you recommend people, if they liked this record, where should they go next with My Dying Bride?
I would say it's a balance, because I think it's always tempting to, if you're unfamiliar with My Dying Bride, you have the almost cultural obligation to go listen to Turn Loose the Swans and Angel in the Dark River, the fundamental classics. I think if you're curious about their sort of modern, punchier, Nuclear Blast era sound, I think they're on Nuclear Blast right now. Like I said before, Immortal Binding, their newest record, I really like. And then I really like Light at the End of the World, the songs Darkness, Words of Light. So some highlights. But also they're one of those bands I would say, with the exception of 35% Complete, you can, if you like this record, just throw a dart at the discography and listen to it. You'll have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Soren, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I feel like I'm more in the classics camp in terms of my Dying Bride listenership.
Sure.
But I think whatever I've been since I've gone back and listened to the classics, and I've gone and taken a look at other My Dying Bride since then. Those have been the ones that have most captivated me. But I think that's a fair loop to do. Go back and then go forward as you will. And I think I appreciated them in a different light. I don't know what it was, but it didn't quite click with me the first few times I listened to that record. But for whatever reason, after kind of getting into this record, I felt like I had more of a sense of the band.
Yeah,
because there are punchier hooks to songs like "And My Father Left Forever" than I think there is on anything like "Turn Loose the Swans."
I didn't mention it, but on that song, I thought that was like as close to a power metal song that My Dying Bride could get to. Like it sounds like it could be, dude, and it sounds like it could. Like, even his vocal delivery at points sounds like it could be on like a Sonata Arctica record or something like that. So
that's another classic Soren Mourne, Etienne Flinn.
I used to sing a long time in the tour van.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, to what? Full Moon, is that the song?
Oh god, yeah.
Like the whole first 4 albums. I'm much more of a every Sonata Arctica album is a good Sonata Arctica album kind of guy.
There
and
you
I
go.
think our first 4 albums, but
yeah, I feel like the classic Etienne move is saying that like I thought their new album was the best.
Yes.
of any band. Like my classic movies.
Hence
Like
we're-
I don't listen to anything before the year 2000.
But I mean, we're here listening to a very late career My Dying
Yes.
Bride album, so a true Etienne Flinn moment.
Yes, very much. But like I said, I am so glad. It was not the My Dying Bride album that I was expecting, but I'm so glad that you all chose it because I got to get into it. And Soren, I'm kind of in the same boat with you as far as the My Dying Bride that I've checked out so far. I've like tried to go through the albums, and I'm just like, well, maybe one of these days we'll figure out. I am going to go back to Songs of Darkness, Words of Light, because that one of the ones that I've been listening to also intrigued me a lot. And Etienne, I was just doing the dart throwing as well. I was just like, this one, that one. I've heard about this one. I've heard about that one. Let's go.
That one I always think about it has like there was a peak like horrible CGI covers phase in metal, and that album cover is deep into that world.
Yes, it very much looks of the time of 2004.
That Maiden album.
Yeah. Dance, yes, let's go.
Arch Enemies, Chaos Legions, just like album covers that look like they should be in like bargain bin Xbox game covers.
Yeah. Great era.
With great music in them.
I was trying to see if they had the album artist on it, but I think they've removed all trace of whoever put it on. It reminds me very much. There's a Cataclysm record around this time that looks very.
Oh, like
very
is that like In the
similar.
Arms of Devastation?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
it has the same vibe. Yeah, totally.
Before you go, I just want to let you guys know that the new album is great, and that I'm so glad, like you were talking about, $20 Spin went and took a chance on y'all. That you were talking about them, and I'll gush about them for a minute too, because like they just have a strong roster from top to bottom, where it's basically like, I know that if $20 Spin releases it, I may not like be down with it, but I know it's going to be quality, right? It may not be my cup of tea, or I may not go back to it a lot, but I know that it's going to be something I'll enjoy. And most of the time, especially last year, the releases that they had, it was like every other fucking month they were releasing just some banger of some ridiculous progressive death metal band or something like that. And I love the fact that you can have that. Like, you can have Severus and you can have Tribunal, speaking of purple album covers. But like, I'm just so stoked that they believe in you and you have this opportunity with them.
Yeah, like such a dream label. Like we lost it when they responded to our demo submission. We sent like every label we could find a contact email for. But that was one we didn't. Again, I think of them much more as being a bit more of a death metal label.
Very much so, yeah.
Like they have Chemist in that, but I wasn't really, of all the labels, I was not expecting them to respond. But Dave did and was excited about the record, and that was so incredible. Super grateful for that.
Yeah, no, they're a label that definitely before we were on it, I had the similar sense. If it's got the $20 seal, $20 Spin seal of approval, like I know it's going to be quality stuff. So it's and they've been a pleasure to work with, and also love that they're so into the the physical merch and everything. We've got our first $20 Spin like 4-panel long sleeve coming out with this record. Very exciting.
Let's go.
And everything going down it. So very, very exciting. So yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Amazing. Well, people will be able to listen to In Penitence and Ruin right now. And I'll ask you a very open-ended question that doesn't have an answer. But I ask it anyway when people have albums that are coming out, and Etienne, we'll start with you. What do you hope people take away from this record when they listen to it?
Oh man, that's tough. I mean, for me, the core of it's always music. I love the music on it. I think I'm really proud of the music on it, and I hope people really enjoy the music on it. I think maybe more so than our first album. I'm not going to say it has a message, but certainly I think it has important questions. And I hope people think a bit. But ultimately, I hope people enjoy the songs. I hope people come to a show and have a great time.
I also hope that people are able to spend time with it and engage with all the different musical layers and ideas that are going on. We've got such phenomenal musicians in our band, and everyone has brought their own experience and sound to this record, and so I feel really excited to have everybody together on the record. So definitely hope people will give it the time and appreciate all those different layers in everyone's work. I do hope lyrically that people will have a bit of a ponder and think about things from some perspectives that they may not have thought of them before. And I feel like that's ambitious. There are many records that I love, and I don't think I have really thought about what the lyrics actually
Yeah, same.
mean for a lot for a lot of them. But you know, optimistically, it would be great if this could if someone had any kind of personal connection to any of the songs, that would be, you know, that's very exciting to us whenever that happens, and if it can prompt some kind of thought, then that would be great as well.
Hell yeah. I hope it will as well, and I'm excited to get the physical version, put it on my record player downstairs, and just like sink into it and have a great time, as you're supposed to do with music. So,
Yeah.
Soren, Etienne, thank you so much for listening to a long, sad, miserable album with me, for sharing your insight for the band, and for just being great people to talk to.
Well, thank you. We had a great time.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome. I urge you with every fiber of my being to go check out and listen to Tribunal's new album, In Penitence and Ruin. Spend some time with it, read the lyrics, let the music wash over you, just like Soren hoped that you would do. In the time since recording the interview you just heard and recording this here outro, I've gotten to dive deeper and deeper into the record, and every listen is like a new, sad adventure. $20 spin picked themselves up a gem, and I hope Tribunal are around for half as long as My Dying Bride has been. If Penitent is what Tribunal sounds like after album 2, we may not be ready for what is yet to come, my friends. Huge thank you to Etienne and Soren for sitting down and spinning this record with me, despite earlier reservations that we'd run out of shit to say after like track 3 or whatever. I love it when artists are so open about their creative process and really want to get into the weeds and the nitty gritty of the parts of their songs. It makes my job a hell of a lot easier, and I'm sure it makes the episodes much more of a joy for you to listen to. Pick up their new record on Bandcamp or at $20 Spin's website, or go check them out whenever they come to a venue near you. Well, that's all I've got for this episode, my friends. Thank you, as always, for checking out and supporting the show. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Maybe even leave a little comment if you're feeling spicy. If you're listening to this anywhere else, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, please give the show a 5-star review and share it with one of your heavy metal friends if you absolutely could. Word of mouth is massive for us. It's huge. You can find us on Instagram at Spinning the Wax, or find me on Instagram at StayPuft_Malo. Let me know what you thought of Tribunal, how your journey with My Dying Bride is going or has gone, or what your favorite style of doom metal is. There are a lot to choose from. If you want to support the show directly, head over to patreon.com/spinningthewax to choose a tier for you. We've got $1, $3, and $5 tiers set for every budget, and that includes everything from early access and exclusive content to an alternate cut of the episode where you can listen to the album along with us. Until next time, my friends, I hope you take care of yourselves. I hope you take care of each other. Thank you again, everyone. Stay safe, stay sane, stay heavy, stay puffed. See you on the other side, y'all.